Tonight, we are so excited to welcome Reverend Anne Hickey, who is going to explore the power of order. And let me just give a brief introduction of Reverend Anne. She was ordained as a Unity Minister in 2019. She lives in Australia, the spiritual leader of Empower Life in Melbourne. She is a presenter and speaker on spirituality and metaphysics. That's all.
Thank you for inviting me to Unity of the Philippines today. I've really enjoyed to get to know you over the last few weeks, and thank you once again for being so welcoming. So today we're exploring how to establish order in changing times. And what I've noticed is that a lot of people seem to be taking advantage of the extra time they have during the pandemic. They're getting things in order, they're sorting through their cupboards, getting rid of clothes, and just throwing out things or giving away things that they no longer need. And I've been doing that a bit too. At the start of the pandemic, I set myself what I call the pandemic project, which was to sort through all of my Unity books and papers from 12 years of ministerial training. And I have to say that it's a little bit of a mess because during that time I did a lot of training in Hawaii with Florence, and then I'd come back and I'd work full time, and so things got thrown into boxes and didn't really get sorted. So I consider myself to be quite an organized person, but what I've realized as I've been working through my pandemic project is that it may not actually be the case, because although I seem to have a kind of a system, there seems to be an awful lot that's out of order. This week I came across some words of Charles Fillmore's. He says that man can never exercise dominion until he knows who and what he is. And he brings that forth into the external by exercising it in divine order. So I think what he's saying is quite true, because what he's really telling us is that we don't have a true sense of order until we know ourselves. So we've got to know who and what we are. And as I was working through my papers, I realized that the papers I was looking at the start of that 12 years of training were quite muddled. The ideas weren't very clear. And then I progressed through the years, and when I got to the final couple of years, my ideas were just so much clearer, and I seemed to have a much stronger sense of myself. Charles Fillmore also mentions that word dominion. And the power of order gives us dominion over our lives. So what's dominion? Well, if you think of a king, he has dominion over his kingdom, or a queen has her dominion over her queendom. But this means that the king or the queen has the authority to rule. And I would imagine that most of you want to have that authority to rule over your own lives, to be your own king or your own queen of your kingdom. So order is an important faculty because it helps us to bring a proper sequence or system into what we're doing. And when that happens, things get lined up. And you'll find that when things are organized, when you've got a good system or a good sequence, things just work out. We feel like we're in the flow, and we have days like that when things are just working perfectly in order. And there's a sense of harmony with that. And so if you think of a young mother with toddlers, if she's not organized, then the home life can be chaotic. If you think about yourself at work, if you're not organized at work, you might be late, or you might not be prepared for that special meeting. In fact, you could even get fired. And if we're not organized, we might let someone down at an important moment, and we could lose a friendship from it. So if we don't have order, there's a good chance that we have disorder. So here are some of the things that we know about order. It's one of the 12 powers, And Florence has been talking with you a lot about the 12 powers. It's the power for September, and its color is olive green. All of the 12 powers are located in a specific part of the body, and so order's located in the stomach area, just behind the navel. And so it's not surprising that when things are out of order, we can get an upset stomach, or you might get indigestion. Or if things are in disarray for a long period of time, you could in time develop a stomach ulcer. If we look to the scriptures, the power of order is represented by the disciple James, the son of Alphaeus. And he was one of the 12 disciples of Jesus whom we don't hear much about. But that's because his work was quiet. His work was to encourage cooperation amongst the 12 disciples. He had a way of kind of bringing them together. And that's what order does for us. It brings all of our powers together in a cooperative way, and that creates harmony for us. Well, most of us feel pretty good when we're organised, and we like to have things in order. It just gives us a sense of well-being. And some of you might have heard of Marie Kondo. She devised this Japanese system of organisation called the KonMari method. Well, she makes these little posts and puts them on YouTube, and she shows you how to organize your cupboards. And I was looking at one of her YouTube videos, and she was showing everyone how to roll up their t-shirts, and that this was a really good way of storing them, and then you put them in your wardrobe and color code them. So she had this kind of really great little system, and I think a few years ago she had a lot of younger followers. But her main idea was that once you tidy up your home, you spark more joy in your life. Well, is that actually true? Because the problem is that we often organize our physical environment and we think that we're putting things in order. But this is not always the case. When I was growing up, we had a family friend who, to me, seemed to be highly organized. She lived in a big, beautiful house, and when you went to her place, you walk in the front gate, and she had a perfectly manicured garden, and then you'd go inside, beautiful furniture, a big, open, clean sort of place. And she ran a successful business, so she must have been very good at organizing business. She made a lot of money, she had a luxury car, and she was a great cook. And so we always had lunch when we went over there. So we'd sit down for lunch, and the table would be beautifully set with the napkin and the knives and the forks and the plates all in order. And then the meal would come out, and there'd be, you know, carrot there, and there'd be some beans there, and like everything was totally organized. So one of the things I noticed about her, though, was when we were having lunch, she often talked about other people in not very favorable ways. So she'd be talking about someone in her work that was working in a business who was not doing the right thing, or how she'd had a disagreement with someone, you know, one of her suppliers, or um, and then she seemed to kind of write people off. So she'd have something happen with someone, and that was it. She'd never talk to them again. So eventually, what happened with her was that she was sued by another company, and then she started to have money problems. And then much later on, the family found out that her husband, whom she'd been with at the time, had been having an affair through the whole of the marriage, and in actual fact had a child with this other woman. And so her her home life and, you know, her whole way of living just appeared to be so totally in order. Especially to me, I grew up in a kind of artistic household, so things were very messy. So I really liked the sense of order was there. But in actual fact, that order was misleading because her personal life and her relationships were in complete disorder. So we've got to be careful not to be fooled by appearances. You know, things can appear to be in order, But what we see externally is not always what's going on internally. And I'm just reminded of those words of Charles Fillmore. He says, order gives us dominion. And so in these changing times, and there's a lot of changes going on around us, it's really important that we create a firm foundation of order. So how do we do that? Establishing a firm foundation means getting yourself in order, and it begins by organizing the mind. Remember that all of your ideas come into the mind first, and that's where you develop them, you shape them, you mold them, you give them color. And so it makes sense that that's the place where we would begin. Some of you will know the story of the Buddha, that he was searching for the secret to enlightenment. And so he decided that he would travel and he'd ask all of the great gurus, please tell me, what is the secret to enlightenment? And so he traveled all over the world and he came back home eventually. He was very disappointed because none of the gurus had been able to tell him the secret. And so he went and sat under the Bodhi tree and he meditated. And then he found the secret to enlightenment. And order's a bit like that. It's a bit like enlightenment. The secret to order is not out there, it's in you. And so we begin by organizing the mind, and that means that we must have right thoughts. So think about your attitudes. These are part of your thoughts. What's your attitude to work? Are you positive? What's your attitude to other people? Do you get annoyed, and are you able to see the good in someone? Think about your ideas. Are you just following along with what other people are thinking or doing? Or do you have your own thoughts and your own intelligent ideas? And consider your judgments. Do you make a judgment about a certain situation before you even go to that meeting? You're already made up your mind about what's going to happen when you're there. And so, we have to think about the thoughts and think about if they're the right thoughts. We want to be open-minded. We want to be open to things being able to be changed. Otherwise, we're just recreating those same negative thoughts. The second thing that we can do is to get our emotions in order. And that means having right feelings. So just get in touch with what feelings you hold. Do you hold a grudge? Are you ever bitter about what someone's done to you? Are you holding on to a failed marriage and what happened there? Or are you resenting a situation you're in? Because these are the kind of feelings that we need to be able to move through. And maybe we have to be more patient or more accepting or even more forgiving. We have to be able to forgive someone to be able to then move to the feelings that we want. So what feelings do you want? Ask yourself that question. What feelings do I really want? Do you want to feel free? Because you won't feel free if you're stuck in old negative feelings. Do you want to feel grateful for what you have? Or do you take advantage? We all take advantage of some of our stuff, but do you want to have more grateful feelings? Be more open to what the blessings are that you've been receiving? Or do you want to feel more love? Then you've got to get that feeling of love within you. So here we are, we're getting ourselves in order, we're getting the right thoughts, and we're getting the right feelings. And this is just a really great place to start. We can use prayer. If you're really trying to forgive someone and you're finding it hard, then take it into prayer. Sometimes reflection time is great because it gives us awareness, getting in touch. What am I feeling about this situation? Why do I always feel tense when I go there? Yeah, I've got anxiety about this person, or, I feel inadequate about this. So reflection's really important. Meditation is wonderful for shifting the mind. Meditation is in a way like prayer, but it's when we connect to the divine and then we listen. So we can call forth inner guidance if we're confused about a situation. And then giving, and I've put giving there because sometimes we get so stuck in our own problems that we just find it very hard to shift out of that. But when you give something to another person, it takes your mind off yourself. And so it's a really good way to shift your thinking. And don't feel that you don't have something to give someone. You can always give them your time or your attention. And so when you get yourself in order, you establish a firm foundation. You see, it's so much easier for us to get our outer life in order when our inner life is in order, when we do that first. When we feel calm and we feel at ease, it's just a much better way for us to be in these changing times, because otherwise we might feel unstable with all the changes that are going on around us. But when our mind and our emotions are in order, we can take that with us. When we've got to go to that family get together and there's that difficult person there that we feel so stressed about, or when we have to go and have the meeting with the boss that we're dreading, you'll just find yourself ready for that. And so establishing order, so important. Get yourself in order first. When I was younger, I was a professional violinist and I used to play in the orchestra at the theatre. And so before the show, I'd be backstage with all the other musicians and we'd see the stage manager running around trying to organise everyone, making sure that everything was in place for the show before it started. And the actors would be waiting in the wings, but you'd see them just running through their lines. The costume people would be running around fiddling with people's costumes, just making sure that they were all looking right. And the props guys would be on stage and they'd be making sure that all the props were set up exactly as they needed to be. So, the table would need to be on the right angle and they'd have to make sure that there was a cup there for this particular scene so that it all went to plan. And then about 10 minutes before the show would start, the orchestra would go in the pit and then off we go. And on a good day, the show would just go perfectly. And we knew that the stage manager had done his job. He just put everyone in order and then the show unfolded as it was meant to do. And, usually the audience was not even aware at all that all of this preparation had been done. But this reminds me of the faculty of order and how it works, that it's really like our spiritual stage manager. It brings everything into perfect order. And so the next time that things seem to be going wrong, when you feel like what's going on, or you feel annoyed or irritated or confused, or things are in a total state of chaos, this is the moment for you to affirm divine order. And you can do that by calling on your spiritual stage manager. And I like to say this affirmation. I say, divine order is now at work. And I think that we can practice that together. Say it with me. Divine order is now at work. And I'll bet that if you use that affirmation, if you say it when things feel like they're not going right, you will look back and you'll notice that this is a turning point when everything just began to go smoothly again. And so we talk about divine order, and what does that actually mean? Well, there's divine order in nature, and in fact, the whole of the universe is built on divine order. We see it in the sunrise. So the sun doesn't just come up when it feels like it, like we do sometimes. It has a precise timing to it. We see divine order in the tides. The tides come in and they go out. And we see divine order in the stars, and that's a really complex system. And we see divine order in the seasons as well. You know, how does a tree know when to drop its leaves? Or how does it know when to open its bud? So there's this kind of natural order to creation. And there's an intelligence in there that creates and sustains everything that exists in the universe. And when we can organize our thoughts and our emotions around divine order, we are establishing order in our very being. And it makes no difference what's going on around us. There can even be a pandemic. It doesn't matter because we've established a firm foundation within us. So here are some things that we want to remember when we're establishing order. Remember to be the king of your kingdom or the queen of your queendom. Get yourself in order first, and that means getting right thoughts and right feelings. And you can use prayer, pray on it, reflect on it, meditate on it. And if you're really stuck, remember you can always give to someone else. Call on your spiritual stage manager when things don't seem to be going quite as you'd like them to be. And we can use the affirmation, divine order is now at work. And let's say that once more together. Divine order is now at work. The whole universe, including you, is built on divine order. Nothing can come between you and your divine order. And in closing, I'm going to invite you to say this affirmation with me. Together, divine order is established in me. And so it is. I now invite you into a time of meditation. Relax and turn within, gently closing the eyes and noticing the breath, breathing in slowly and breathing out slowly. Putting aside any sounds or any outer disturbances. And become aware of universal order. That is the space that you and I, and indeed everyone, lives and moves and has their being. And as you breathe in and breathe out, let your attention drop to the stomach area, focusing on the point just behind the navel. Having the awareness that this is the physical center for the faculty of order. And we take a moment to plant the seed of order within us. And we grow that seed. And with a deep inner knowing, we know that all is coming into alignment. And we move forward harmoniously, smoothly, and effortlessly. this moment we claim the Christ in me is quickening my faculty of order. The Christ in me is quickening my faculty of order. And we affirm, divine order is established in me. Divine order is established in me. As this time of meditation comes to a close, we give thanks for the gift of order, knowing that it continues to do its work through us. And so it is.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation of Divine Order. I like hearing the Queen in the I like
Yeah, well, we have a queen, so it's a queendom, I reckon.
that. And that, yes, we truly are in charge of this kingdom within us. And Reverend Anne,